Without it, we are lost, and without it, the subject does not stand. And if one is to neglect it in their journey of learning Arabic, you notice that it is impossible for them to even make sense when they are speaking or reading or reciting or listening. Why should we focus on the ending of the words? What do we get out of it? Why is it that deep way when it comes to studying Arabic? No matter how much vocabulary you know, if you cannot set the endings correctly, your words or sentences will never make sense. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله وصلى الله وسلم وبارك على رسول الله وعلى آله وصحبه ومن والاه وبعد. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Inshallah ta'ala, in this class, it is the chapter that we are going to go through, that which, if we are to neglect in this subject that we are studying currently, then the entire subject falls apart. Basically, it wouldn't mean anything because it is the core and the mother of what we are trying to get to. Because from the beginning to where we've reached and trying to summarize as best as we could, you notice that we've just introduced the subject by showing, okay, how do we find Arabic words? How many types are there? How could we separate them from one another by their signs and indicators? And how can we use them according to what grammar provides us? But this chapter, without it, we are lost, and without it, the subject does not stand. And if one is to neglect it in their journey of learning Arabic, you notice that it is impossible for them to even make sense when they are speaking or reading or reciting or listening. Without it, we are totally lost. Look at the whiteboard. Aywa. Let me give you an example. ضرب محمد عليا. ضرب محمد عليا. Now, between this and ضرب محمد علي, what's the main difference? What difference do you see? Look at this. عليا. علي. This one is correct. Sorry, not this one. This one is correct, and this one is wrong, without a shadow of a doubt. Why? Because if we now come to the notes of what we are trying to look into, or exactly what the chapter is, it is known as the chapter of inflections. Babul i'rab. That's what the al-Musannif rahimahullah ta'ala, what he prepared after we looked at al-kalamu aqsamuhu. After we have done that, now we enter into Babul i'rab, and then he provides us the definition of it after looking into the definition, and then he says how many types are there of that. But there are things that we need to look at before we even get to the types and all of that. First, let's look at the definition, inshallah ta'ala. Look at this. Now, introduction to inflections. باب الإعراب. أليس كذلك؟ الإعراب. ما هو الإعراب؟ What is الإعراب؟ هو تغيير أواخر الكلم. I want you to recite with me. لاختلاف العوامل الداخلة عليها لفظا أو تقديرا. I'm going to repeat that again. هو تغيير أواخر الكلم لاختلاف العوامل الداخلة عليها لفظا أو تقديرا. Now, something I want to bring to your attention is this. Look at this. This is one box. This is another box. And this is another box. So what I tried to do is to divide this entire lesson, basically this entire lesson of Al-I'rab in this specific lesson. Remember, we're just introducing inflections. And what are inflections when we say inflections? Inflections we mean specifically the harakat, mainly the harakat. If you look, fatha, kasra, dhamma, sukun. Those are the main ones. And then you'd obviously have the fathatain, you have the kasratain, you have the dhammatain. You don't have sukunain, you don't have double sukuns. No, you don't have this. It doesn't make sense. So you have these, and these we said that they work with nouns. أليس كذلك؟ الأسماء. Al-Asma. If you go back to the previous classes, you will see the playlist, inshallah ta'ala, in the channel بإذن الله الكريم, you'll see that we covered what are the signs of nouns. You notice that the inflections, تغيير أواخر الكلم, إعراب, inflections, it is those which change. A word can have this, 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 and this. Now coming back to the definition, when he says تغيير أواخر الكلم, I want to bring to your attention is this. تغيير أواخر الكلم, part number one, what we want to look at specifically. الكلمات العربية, Arabic words, they're either going to be from the sarf part or they're going to be from nahu. And when we say that, this is what we mean. Abniyatul kalima is related to sarf. Awakhirul kalima, it is related to, or akhirul kalima is related to nahu. What is that supposed to mean? It's too Arabic what I've just provided, صح? Now look, a sarfu, which is known as morphology, when you morph, basically things change from one shape to another. ليس كذلك? Now abniyatul kalima, the building of words, the building blocks of words. What does that mean? For example, you have the word baytun. I wouldn't use this, by the way. Let me just use the whiteboard for you. Make it very easy. Look, you have the word baytun. أليس كذلك? Then the plural of it is buyutun. The plural of it is buyutun. What happened is that this word, baytun, what happened to it? It was broken. Look, bay plus wow, and then tun, like this. So we had to call it ba, ya, wow, like this, buyutun. So you notice this wow broke the word to two. It divided it to two, then added something plus something, which is the letter wow. That's why you have buyutun. أليس كذلك? So that's what you call sarf. You're building. So for example, if you're not building like that, then you're adding into it in the building of the word itself. So aslul kalima, let's say the single form of it is Muslim. أليس كذلك? Muslim. Muslim means a Muslim. As a submitter, Muslim. If you want to say for the men, a group of men together, you have to plus wow and noon. Wow and noon. So what do you have? You have Musli. Notice that? Musli Muna. So you are doing what? You're adding in this case. In this case, you are adding. In this case, you are breaking to build, isn't it? You are breaking to build. Now when you pay attention clearly, this is what you find is that let me just wipe these off. Yes, so that this can be very clear for you. Now let me just wipe this one off too. Muslimuna, like that. So what you notice is that this is what sarf does. Like when it comes to grammar, if you come back to this, it says akhirul kalima, which means the ending of words. So you tell me in the in the comment section, what are we specifically paying attention to? Are we paying attention to the building blocks of the words, or are we paying attention to the ending of words? What one are we doing? Are we looking at nahu or are we looking at sarf? Which one are we looking at? Are we looking at grammar, which is nahu, or are we looking at sarf, which is morphology? I believe you already know the answer. We're looking at nahu. So nahu, what we focuses on is the ending of the words. What's so important about it? Why should we focus on the ending of the words? What do we get out of it? Why is it that deep way when it comes to studying Arabic? No matter how much vocabulary you know, if you cannot set the endings correctly, your words or sentences will never make sense. Forget about sounding like a caveman. You wouldn't sound like anything. Basically, no one would understand what you're trying to say. Because if I say Look at the whiteboard again, because if I say مثلا, in this case what we just said over here, ضرب محمد. Muhammad, ضرب means struck. عليا, because Ali, this word Ali ended with فتحتين. أليس كذلك? With فتحتين like this. Who was the victim of the action? It was Ali. Ali was the victim. But when it comes to this one, Muhammadun, Aliyun, basically a simple fatha, kasra, dhamma, any one of those, you notice that this word Muhammad ended with dhammatain and the word Ali ended with dhammatain. That becomes problematic. Both of them are not the doers, subject doers of an action. Basically, they're not the one who did the action. Could be either Muhammad or it could be Ali. We don't know because you didn't specify. So if I say ضرب محمد علي, مثلا like that, I wouldn't make sense at all. I would not make sense at all. Let me give you a simple example in the Quran. أيوة. Now look, a good example is اقرأ باسم ربك الذي خلق. خلق الإنسان من علق. If I am to say خلق الإنسان مثلا خلق الإنسان, that's a huge problem. What is that supposed to mean? When you say خلق الإنسان, look at how subtle it is. خلق الإنسان, meaning Allah created insan. Allah created the insan, mankind, the human. But when you are to say خلق الإنسان, and I used a very simple surah, Surah Al-Alaq in Juz Amma, as you can see, one of the most beautiful surahs that each one of us read, isn't it? When you say خلق الإنسان like that, it becomes a huge problem. What it means, you're saying that the human being is the one that created. I hope you understand what I'm trying to say. If I say insanu, just the change of a fatha to dhamma, that's an issue. Basically, you're saying that the human being created, and that's detrimental even to faith. Look at that. Another one is علم الإنسان. Allah taught the insan, the human being. If you are to say علم الإنسان مثلا إنسان, then you're saying that the human being is the one that taught. Taught what? Now, you notice a subtle difference at the end. If you change the fatha to a dhamma or to a kasra, it becomes an issue. That's the whole purpose why you need grammar to come and break them down to you. Now, these harakat, as you can see in the whiteboard, these harakat, they have names. They have names. Hence, they are called inflections. Inflections such as the dhamma, fatha, kasra, and sukun, all of those. But if you look at the following right now, look at this. Aywa. We said that as we are focusing with the ending of words, the second part of the definition, لاختلاف العوامل الداخلة عليها, which we said تغيير أواخر الكلم. What does تغيير أواخر الكلم mean? تغيير أواخر الكلم, the changing of the ending of the words. Basically, the ending of words changing from one haraka to another haraka to another haraka. Understood? That's what we are focusing on, which is النحو. Now, when it comes to لاختلاف العوامل الداخلة عليها, the agents which enter into those words, they cause the change. And the agents that we are referring to, we said in simple words, in a simple explanation, is the harakat, inflections, أليس كذلك, or the vowel markings, which is fatha, dhamma, kasra, sukun, isn't it? Now, over here, those harakat, they have a name. Grammatically, which basically, if you want to give it its definition according to the grammar, to the science itself, according to grammar, they have names. There's a reason behind it, and I will come to explain it to you. The first one that we look into, and it is the most common one, ar-rafa. We have ar-rafa, and then we have an-nasb, and then we have al-jar, which is also known as al-khafd, and then we have al-jazm. Al-jazm. All of these, by the way, they each stand for something. Each one of them stand for something. Al-Raf'u is main sign. The main sign of Al-Raf'u, it is the Dhamma. Understood? The main sign of Al-Nasb, it is the Fatha. The main sign of Al-Jar, it is the Kasra. The main sign of Al-Jazm, it is the Sukun. It's as simple as that. The main sign of Al-Raf' is the Dhamma. The main sign of the Al-Nasb, it is the Fatha. The main sign of Al-Jar, it is the Kasra. And the main sign of Al-Jazm, it is the Sukun. Now, something I want to bring to your attention is this. You find that in the Sharh, it is provided in Sharh al-Muqaddimat al-Ajrumiyyah, as we always mention at Tuhfat al-Saniyah. That's the main Sharh that we are referring to all the time. The Rafa' and the Nasb and the Jar, these three work for Asma. They work for Asma. Basically the nouns, okay? They work for the nouns. Lakin the Jazm does not. This Sukoon which you're seeing here, this big sukoon here, this one doesn't work for the nouns. It does not work for the nouns, which means to say, the jazm and the nasb and the raf', these three, these work for the af'al, the verbs only. Does that make sense? For the verbs only. That is to say, this jar does not work for the verbs. Not for verbs. What is that supposed to mean? What is that supposed to mean? Look at the whiteboard. It means you will not find a verb that ends with a kasra. For example, simple words, a verb is يفعل 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 مثلا, isn't it? يفعل means he is doing, isn't it? This word can end with a dhamma, it can end with a fatha, it can end with a kasra. Sorry, not a kasra, it can end with a sukun. Any one of these. Now look, dhamma, yes. Fatha, yes. Sukun, yes. Can it end with a kasra? No. No kasra, that's wrong. This one is wrong. It doesn't work that way. What about the noun? What about the noun? Give me a noun. Give me a noun. Think of one. Think of any. A simple one. Let's say I'll give you Medina. Okay? Medina to Rasul. Askha min badal. Like, I don't want to go to that. I just want to mention the word Medina. 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 Medina means town, isn't it? Medina can end with Medina to Madinata, Madinati. But if you add a sukun up here, this is what you're going to get. Fatha, yes. Dhamma, yes. Kasra, yes. But when it comes to a sukun, no, it doesn't work. You can't get Madinat. It doesn't work that way. Does that make sense? It doesn't work that way. Lakin then you might say, but Ustad, sometimes I see in the Quran that a verb at the end, it ended with a sukun, but that sukun changed to a kasra. That sukun changed to a kasra. For example, if you have a word such as qalat, 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 like this, qalat means she said. Remember when we said that this ta, it is the feminine ta, the feminine ta, which comes at the end of a verb with a sukun. It's an open feminine ta that comes at the end of a verb with a sukun. Remember that in our previous classes. If you go on the playlist, you'll notice that the answers are there. Because of this, sometimes we have the word, let's say, ukhruj. Ukhruj. Now this alif is not pronounced when it is combined as two words. So what happens is there's a sukun here and then there's a sukun here, which is known as in Arabic iltiqa'u sakinain, the meeting of two sukuns, the colliding of two sukun, the basically combination of two sukun. What do you do in this case? You can't have two of dominating harakat basically at the same level and have them to literally work together. You need to use the one which is lesser than that one. Now when it comes to a sukun and a kasra, the kasra is lower. Bear that in mind. In this case, the kasra is lower. So what would you say? You would say قالت وقالت اخرج قالت. So you drop the first sukun and you keep the second sukun. قالت اخرج, like this. Does that mean this doesn't have a sukun? That's not what it means. Originally, it's a sukun. Originally, it's a sukun. Lakin, you cannot maintain the sukun because of two sukuns colliding with one another. You need to let go of one, and that's the first one. I hope that makes sense, inshallah ta'ala. Now, as you've understood, in simple words, the sukun, the jazm does not work with the nouns. Lakin the other ones, the other type of inflection, they do. They do. However, the kasra, the jar, does not work with the verbs, but the other inflections work with the verbs. Inshallah. So that's very clear. Coming back to our text again, over here, you notice that, so we said we have the rafa' and nasb, al-jar, al-jazm, and the main sign of al-rafa' is dhamma, the main sign of al-nasb is fatha, the main sign of al-jar is kasra, and the main sign of al-jazm is sukoon, as simple as that. But then there's another issue that we need to bring to the attention of the student. What is that issue? The issue is that these harakat, that's why you notice when we come back to the definition again, look, هو تغيير أواخر الكلم. It is the changing of the ending of words. أليس كذلك؟ لاختلاف العوامل الداخلة عليها. Now we know the agents such as الرفع والنصب والجر والجزم. We know the agents. لفظا أو تقديرا. There's another issue. That's why the definition. للتعريف أن يكون مانعا وجامعا في نفس الوقت. He has to literally exclude and he has to be exclusive. Basically, you have to include what is necessary and it has to exclude what is not needed in the definition. It has to be very precise, not concise, very precise. A definition has to be very precise according to that which you want to explain. That's why the ulama, when they need to provide definitions, they have to be very good at the science of logic as well, because the science of mantiq allows you to learn, okay, well, how do you add it? What do you need in a definition? What do you exclude from a definition? That's why you notice that when it comes to salah, what is salah? Salah is قربة فعلية ذات إحرام وسلام أو سجود فقط. It didn't mention ruku', it didn't mention anything else. There's a reason behind it. قربة فعلية ذات إحرام وسلام أو سجود فقط. It is a deed which you draw close to Allah with, which contains ihram, and it contains salam. Basically, the opening of it is ihram, takbiratul ihram, Allahu Akbar, and the ending of it is salam. Lakin this salah can also include a sujood. It can also have a sujood, which means, is there a salah with no sujood? Is there a salah with no ruku'? Yes, there is. Such as salatul janazah. Salatul janazah does not have a ruku', it doesn't have a sujood, but it is a salah. ليس كذلك من معظم الصلوات. It's among the salawat that we pray on our day-to-day life, such as janazah, such as salatul dhuhr, such as salatul duha, and all of those. Imagine that. There are even salawat which contain two ruku's inside them. ثم الكسوف ركعتان عندنا. زد كل ركعة قياما وانحناء. What does that mean? When it comes to ruku', when it comes to kusuf, salatul kusuf, what do? You have two ruku's and then you have two qiyams in one rak'ah. Think about it. That's why the definition has to be that precise. So coming back to our i'rab, لفظا أو تقديرا. لفظا, by utterance, you either utter the harakat such as the dhamma, the fatha, the kasra, the sukoon. I keep on repeating those so that it can make sense to you and always remember in your mind, in yourself. Subconsciously, you're memorizing them. That's why I told you to repeat this definition with me. So what happens is, لفظا, you either utter them or you hear them, or تقديرا, you assume them. They're not there, but they literally work the same. Sometimes they're not there. So no matter how much you literally look for them, you won't find them because of the type of words. Understood? And for one to be able to understand that difference, you should go through a sarf, not alone a sarf. You should be able to gather vocabulary. You would understand this in the science of sarf, and also you would understand this by gathering vocabulary. You have vocabulary which doesn't end with a clear fatha, kasra, or dhamma, or sukun, depending on what it is. It can be a verb or a noun. And after gathering the vocabulary, you need to know how to use them when it comes sarfiyan, basically. In terms of sarf, where do they stand? And then you bring them to grammar. After you've literally manufactured these words, you don't come, basically, I don't mean to say you manufacture the words as if you make them up. You don't make them up. You take the word from process number one, and that is vocabulary. This is what you do. Let me show you on the whiteboard. Process number one, al-kalimat, al-kalima. You have the kalima, okay? And then it goes to al-sarf. And then process number three, it goes to an-nahu. An-nahu. Because this is the word, vocab, this is the vocabulary, and then this is the building of the word, which is morphology, but the building of the word. You know what I mean now when I say sarf. And then this is the ending of the word. So you go by stages. We go by stages. So once you learn the vocabulary, you know how to use it in different shapes and forms, and then you can come and polish it off clearly, perfect it by knowing how to use it and where to place it when you need it. Should it be in a state of nasb? Should it be in a state of rafa? Should it be in a state of jazm? Should it be in a state of jar? What are you trying to explain? Because nahu provides you the clear explanation of what you're trying to provide. Like in a sarf, it shows you how to use those words in order for them to be aligned together. Does that make sense? Inshallah ta'ala. So now coming back to the text again, this one that we have here, you notice lafban, you either hear the harakat, the i'rab, or you just assume. What does that mean? In order for one to understand, we just need to break this down with examples. There's no other way. If I tell you that by this, and I give you literally something as a scientific method of how to use it, you will be literally throw you in the deep end. I don't want to do that. I just want to give you examples so it can be very easy. Muslimun. Let me just zoom this in for you. Look. Muslimun. By the way, this is lafdhan. Notice lafdhan by utterance. Utterance. You utter at the ending. Muslimun. Muslimun. Musliman. Muslimin. So we said this is this section over here, this side here, this side here is the noun. أليس كذلك? This side is the nouns. These are the nouns. Let me just change my color to red. Aywa. And this side here, this side is the verbs. We're specifically focusing on nouns and verbs. And in our next lesson, inshallah ta'ala, in our next class, we want to, we're going to focus on the prepositions as well. Why do we not mention the prepositions here? Because they are in a different category. That I don't want to literally mix you up with this. I'm trying to talk to you something that makes sense right now that can change. Words that allow change. They can change from they can end with a dhamma, being in a state of rafa, or they can end with a fatha, being in a state of nasb, or they can end with a kasra, being in a state of jar, or they can end with a sukun, being in a state of jazm. And you remember already what we said, that the jazm works for the verbs only and the jar works for the nouns only, and the other two, they work for both nouns and verbs. So look at this. These are verbs now. Yusafiru. Yusafiru. Lan yusafira. If you do remember, we said lan is specific for verbs. أليس كذلك? In our previous class, when we were talking about the prepositions and its sign, because we said there are three types of preposition: those which are specific for nouns, those which are specific for verbs, those which work for both nouns and verbs. Lan yusafira causes the verb to end in a state of fatha, that is state of nasb. Lam yusafir. Lam yusafir. The lam causes the verb to end with a sukun, in a state of jazm. Now this is for those which you can see already. Okay, you can see the harakat, you can read them. Yusafiru, lan yusafira, lam yusafir, مثلا. Al-qadi. Now you're like, okay, but now what is happening here? These words are nouns now. Remember, these are nouns, and these ones are verbs. Now this is category number 2. تقديرا, you assume that the haraka is there. These inflections, you just assume that they are there. You give it that measurement of saying, okay, it is there, but you can't see it. Understood? Al-qadi. Al-qadi. Now notice, this one ended in a state of dhamma, which is known as rafa. رفع. The ضمة, the main حركة for the رفع is ضمة. The main حركة for the رفع is ضمة. And I'm going to repeat it again. There's a reason behind it. The reason we say main is because it's not the only sign. The other ones are going to come down to all together as we study along, inshallah. So right now, just focus on the main signs. Don't hurt your head thinking, what are the other signs? Just focus on that, because we have single form words, we have dual form words, we have plural form words, we have al-af'al al-naqisa, al-af'al al-mu'talla, we have so and so and so. There's so many things that you need to go through, but I don't want to literally mind boggle you right now. I just want you to focus on one thing, and I'm going to repeat those things so that you always remember that, inshallah. Al-Qadi is supposed to be in a state of rafa', isn't it? And end as Al-Qadi, but we can't do the Al-Qadi because that's not how you say it. So it's Al-Qadi, okay? Musliman in a state of, you tell me, in a state of what? In the comment section below. What do you think it would be? It would be Musliman, state of Nasb. Allah yaftah alayk. Yes, state of Nasb. So what do you say? Al-Fata. You can't say Al-Fatayan. No, first of all, this ended with fathatain, isn't it? Two fathas, which is the same as one fatha. It's the same thing. Lakin, why over here al-fata? You can't say imagine if there was to be a fathatain, can you end with a tanween if there is alif and lam at the beginning? According to the grammatical rule that you learned in the previous classes, according to the signs of nouns? No, you can't, isn't it? Lakin the last letter that you have over here is this, like a ya. Look at this. It looks like a ya. أليس كذلك? Now this is not a ya. This is an alif. Because let me show you in the whiteboard. Look at this. There's two types of alif. There's two types of alifs. Okay? There is al-alifu al-mamdudah. Al-mamdudah. And then we have al-alifu al-maqsurah. What is that supposed to mean? This is the elongated alif. Elongated alif. And this is the shortened alif. And what's the difference between the two? What's the difference between the two? This one, it looks like this. Alif like that, or alif like this. Okay? Or a straight one. Like in this one, this one, it looks like this at the end. It looks like this as a ya. Simple. Without no dots, actually. Without no dots. So what do you say? Al-fata, al-fata. Such as if you have a name as Salma. Salma. Imagine that, Salma. What other name can we have? We have the word taqwa. I don't know if I added the word taqwa there. Like in taqwa, look at this. Taqwa. Okay, taqwa. Because they ended with these, we call this short alifs. And there are other things that you might come to learn, inshallah ta'ala, if not in grammar, in morphology, but I don't want you to literally disturb your head at the moment. Just focus on knowing that there are two types of alif, short alif and elongated alif. And in our case right now, what we have over here is this. Because it's an alif like this, and the letter before has a fatha, you would say what? Al-fata, simple as that. Ghulami, this was supposed to end with kasra. أليس كذلك, in the state of jar. But we can't do that because there is this ya which says my ghulam, my boy. Now there are situations that if nouns are in those situations, it cannot assume clearly the inflection, whether dhamma, whether fatha or kasra, basically whether rafa' nasb or jar. It cannot assume any of those because of the situation that it's in. And such as this, because it has the pronoun at the end, ghulami, my boy, then it causes it not to end with the right inflection that's needed. It becomes a bit of a challenge and a bit of a problem. Understood? What about verbs? What about verbs? يدعو. There's a waw at the end, isn't it? Now you can't say يدعو with a dhamma. يدعو. It wouldn't work because that's not how you read it. The Arabs did not say it like that. So you can't hear the rafa state. So what do you do? Which is the dhamma. You assume that it's there. An yakhsha. We said that an is specifically used for verbs, such as in the prepositions. Lesson. And this word, if it was to be basically yaqdi, yaqdi, that would have been different because you would have said an yaqdiya. But over here, an yakhsha, the sheen has a fatha, and then it's followed with a short alif like this. The sheen has a fatha followed with a short alif like this. You cannot say an yakhshaya. That's not how you read it. So you dismiss the haraka, but you assume that it's there, which is the inflection itself, the inflection of the nasb. You assume it's there, but you dismiss it. Lam yajri. Now look at this. This is an interesting one. Why? Because this is what I did to it. I literally marked it as red. This ya, I marked it as red. Why so? Because you cannot assume the sukoon. So what do you do? When you have a word such as yajri, now this is going to be a little bit difficult. So I want you to pay attention. Yajiri, you have a word such as yajiri, or you have a word such as yad'u, or if you have a word such as yas'a, like this. This is what happens. These are known as huruf al-illah. These letters at the very end, these are known as huruf al-illah, which we call them in simple language problematic letters. These problematic letters, as you see them here, this is what happens to them. When they are the ones that end at the very end of a verb, when they are the ones which are at the end of a verb, and that verb is supposed to be in a state of jazm, and that verb is supposed to be in a state of jazm, you remove them. Remove them when in a state of jazm. And we said the jazm is the sukoon. أليس كذلك? The jazm is the sukoon. And because of this, so when you have lam, you would say lam yajri. So if you add the ya again in this case, what do? You delete it. For example, if you are to have, let's say, lam yad'u, what do? You delete the waw and you keep the ayn. Lam yad'u. Okay? If you have the word lam yas'a, like this, what do? Is you delete this alif, short alif, and just keep the ayn. Lam yas'a, like that. And inshallah ta'ala, perhaps we might stop here. I don't want to bombard you with too much because as you can see, look at how much we wrote over here. Look at this. We literally made it so rough. Like this. If you want, you can take a snapshot of that and keep it with you, because all of this scruffiness is going to be deleted. That's one. And then this one, you can take a snapshot of this also, and then you can take a snapshot of this if you want, and also you can take a snapshot of this, of how we divided it, inshallah ta'ala. Lakin if you do join our Telegram group, you'll find the notes all provided with you so that you can be very clear for you, inshallah ta'ala. In our next lesson, we are going to focus on al-bina, fixed words that do not change. fixed words that do not change. And we have three of them: the verbs and the prepositions and the nouns. How do you expect them? It might be a short lesson, it might be not. And how we're going to use them, how it's going to work, that's what we're going to focus on. But for now, these are words that accept change at the end. They can be in a state of rafa', they can be also in a state of jazm, in a state of nasb, in a state of jar, depending on what word it is. So as long as they accept change, it's as simple as it gets. And as we move along, you'll come to find some of the meanings of these inflections, i'rab, that you find, so that you can know how to use them. For example, who did the action? Who is the subject? Who is the victim of the action? Who is the object? What are the details of an action, basically, or something, perhaps? What are the details? So you notice that all of these, they have ma'ani, they have meanings. And what are the other types of signs which literally indicate towards any of these inflections, bi'idhnillahi al-kareem? May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala reward you, and literally reward you mainly for your patience. Wa sallallahu wa sallam wa baraka ala nabiyyina Muhammad wa ala alihi wa sahbihi ajma'in.